Hello, and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We're just kind of getting shuffled in, getting warmed up. As always, we take a minute or two to let people find their seats, as it were, in this virtual land that we live in called Zoom and the internet and whatever that we've now all been trapped in since COVID and trying desperately to break out of. We'll get started here in a minute. We should be streaming to Facebook and YouTube and various channels. We're actually starting to experiment with streaming to Instagram, and I think we had a successful Instagram stream a week or two ago. So maybe we'll see you out there on Instagram as well, and wherever else we can put you. Eric, do you have a YouTube channel?
I do, yeah.
Okay, well, we might be streaming out on Eric's YouTube channel. Who knows? We'll talk with Eric about setting that up momentarily. But we can do that if we'd like to. But in the meantime, for those of you that are watching us out on the stream, you can actually jump in here and be in the Zoom call with us, ask questions, interact. Maybe if you have something interesting to say, we can bring you up on camera even. So we will put some links in the chat so that you can do that and join us and get a little bit closer to the conversation. And now it's about time I'll give an intro so you know what exactly you're getting yourself into if you're watching out there and this is your first time. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. It's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. And what we do here is we gather here every Saturday, meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal here is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. And as mentioned, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. You can find out more about Piano Tech Masterclasses at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. Pretty easy. You can also subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, this specific show you're watching right now, for $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's new session, this private Zoom call, as well as archival recordings of now over 200 episodes. It's about 4 years that we've been doing this. And so you can join Piano Tech Radio Hours community at bit.ly/join-PTRH, bit.ly/join-PTRH. Couple announcements up front before we meet our guests for today. Make sure you check out the actual podcast affiliated with this program, pianotechradio.com. We release archival episodes of the show about 2 years back, and then we're also releasing newer episodes. So you might find this episode out there on the podcast within about a month or so. And then we started blogging as well. We're finding our deep dive content in the archive, stuff that talks about the really, really high-end stuff like voicing, regulation, concert prep, rebuilding, even piano design, historical instruments, harpsichords, all this really great content that you really can't get access to unless you travel far and wide and meet with experts in the industry. Bring it all to you in the member area. So what we'll do is we'll write blogs about it, so you get some really great information and you can see what the content's like. If you like it, after you read the blog, you can jump on in and subscribe to the actual masterclass content. So you can check out pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com to do the blog. Make sure you get our socials at Piano Tech Masterclass, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Check them all out. And then we just did a masterclass with the famous Dean Rayburn, an industry great, over 40 years of experience. We did a masterclass on action geometry. And Dean's just really a wonderful instructor. Really lots of great information there. So you can check that out, pianotechniciansmasterclass.com/Dean-Rayburn-2024. All right, there's the announcements, and it is now about time to introduce our guest for today. He's been brought to us by our good friend Hannah Reimann, who you can see regularly on this program, and he's really a gifted pianist. Let's hear a little bit about his background before we get into the conversation. Pianist Eric Clark has garnered acclaim worldwide for his performances. Critics praise his mastery of various composers, from Stravinsky to Liszt, noting his precision and grace. He has showcased his talent as a soloist with orchestras across the globe, including notable performances of works by Saint-Saëns. I know I didn't say that exactly right, Hannah. You can correct me later. Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, Bach, Haydn, Grieg, and Tchaikovsky. As an orchestral pianist, he's collaborated with renowned venues. You might have heard of Carnegie Hall, for example. Beyond classical repertoire, Eric is dedicated to championing new music, recording Christian Scott's Le Mat 22 Arcana, and exploring chamber music with violinist Artur Kaganovsky. Hailing from Bergen County, New Jersey, Eric's musical journey began early, leading to studies with esteemed mentors and earning degrees with honors from Carnegie Mellon University. Additionally, he's an accomplished visual artist, which I'd love to also talk about today. Eric, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ethan and Hannah. It's great to be here. Yeah.
So thank you for sitting through the lengthy introduction. Hopefully it was informative for you. What I'd love to do is just jump on over to Hannah and just get a little background on it. So Hannah knows you. She gives us great recommendations for folks that to be on the program. We've industry and historical greats like David Amram have joined us and things like this. Hannah, tell us, why I thought Eric might make a good guest for the show.
Thank you, Ethan. So I met Eric last July, during the 3rd annual International Stretto Piano Festival, which everybody on your channel by now knows that I'm the founder and artistic director of. One of the things that we do at the festival, since there's only one showroom in the world that has a piano with narrow keys in it right now, and it's located in Bayreuth, Germany, with Steingraber. So, we have these kind of makeshift showrooms after our concerts, and invite artists to the stage one by one to try the keyboard. And that is something that I have wanted to do since I was a student, since I first had my piano rebuilt. And after Steve Stanbird's concert last July, Steve, who we also had on Piano Tech Radio,
Steve, yeah.
There was a ton of people. And I think Eric is one of his friends and colleagues. Jed Disler was there. So everybody's coming up to the piano and playing. And Eric came up and he started playing Islami. He was like, I was like, whoa. And there were some other people playing Rachmaninoff and Scriabin, and it was so exciting. It was like a dream come true for me. And I spoke with him afterwards, and I said, if you'd like to make a recording, if you'd like to spend more time with the piano to see what the possibilities are, I'm welcoming you to Bedford Studio. It's owned by Andy Tomasi and Greenpoint, and come and play the piano. And he was one of the few people who very quickly took me up on that offer after we moved the piano into Bedford Studio. And I was so tired after the festival. I could barely move. And we went up there, and Andy has these big leather couches. So I just kind of like lied down, and Eric played like hours of virtuoso music. And it was wonderful. And I was, interested in having him play for the festival, and he has agreed to. I will be featuring him as the final performer in our closing night concert.
Wonderful.
On June 4th at Symphony Space. I couldn't be more excited to have him playing after Jed Disler's 45 minutes of Thelonious Monk, and then Steve and Zach Brock. Zach's like a very well-known jazz violinist who's played with Snarky Puppy. He's like a big drawn, beautiful guy.
Wonderful.
And it's called Jazz Meets Classical, and Eric will be our virtuoso playing Chopin and Balakirov's Islami at the end. So that's my story about.
Well, that's a great introduction. In addition to our formal introduction, a little informal one. Eric, I'm itching to hear you play, but we need to hear you talk a little bit, because everybody else has talked a little bit. You're living in New York, and we went to Carnegie Mellon, a little bit down the whatever the highways over there in Pennsylvania. What's your musical origin? What's your background story? How did you get into this thing, and why did you choose to become an artist as you are?
Yeah, great questions. I would say I have a little bit of a different background than a lot of people, in that in my teenage years, I did a lot of rock bands playing. I was in a number of groups, and like when the high school pop show would come up, I would be in like 3 different bands because a lot of people asked me to play. So I haven't been active in that area lately, but I do have roots in that genre, I would say, and also playing for musical theater shows, like, different productions, and community theater. I did a lot of that too growing up. But classical was always a passion. And I was kind of not sure about whether I wanted to do music. My parents kind of scared me, that it's a dangerous thing to do. I should have a backup plan and so forth. So the 2 choices I had were Carnegie Mellon and NYU. And I went to Carnegie Mellon, I guess, to get away from my family a little bit, to be on my own and figure things out. And within me, I was a chemistry and piano major. Maybe I should fill in on that. So I really wasn't, like, if you had asked me in high school, like, what did I want to be when I grew up, like, I didn't think I was going to be a pianist, actually. I thought probably I'll be some kind of scientist, and the piano is just like a passion. But when I got to school and I was on my own, I found myself just procrastinating all the time from my classes, just practicing. And I met my professor there. His name is Enrique Graf. He was a student of Leon Fleischer, and he was very encouraging. He thought that he saw potential, and also encouraged me to, like, do music all the way. If I'm going to do it now, just do it. Like, I could always do something else later. So within maybe like 1 semester, I switched. I was a double major, and then I just did piano, and I had to argue with my family about it for a little while. So yeah, I wasn't really, I would say I was a little bit of like a late bloomer. I wasn't, a prodigy playing concertos by the time I was 10. I did play. I started when I was 5, imitating my mom playing the piano. She could play like Clementi sonatinas and the Moonlight Sonata first movement, that sort of thing. I do have some musicians in my family. My grandma also plays, and her father, Silvio D'Arienzo, was a composer and pianist whose music I recently played for the Musicians Club of New York at Scandinavia House. So it's sort of in my background. The piano I was hearing it at a young age. Yeah.
Wonderful. Musicians Club of New York at Scandinavia House. That sounds fun. I've got to check that out. Now, is it always at Scandinavia House, or do they kind of rotate locations? Or?
They rotate locations. They've done things at Bruno Walter Auditorium and something called the Liederkranz Club. I've been there once, but I don't remember where it is. And yeah, they do different venues. I've seen things at Steinway Hall by them. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we have our piano tuning company in New York City, Floating Piano Factory. And one thing we've been experimenting with recently is we start putting out a newsletter. And within the newsletter, we mention cultural events, of theater, music, dance, maybe a couple restaurant suggestions, things people could choose to do on the weekend or whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, you probably would, piano tuning's interesting, but we're not going to talk about, Hammerfeld every week. We're going to talk about what's cool to do in New York because it's fun to talk about, and then we'll mention, Floating Piano Factory. But yeah, events like, stuff like that's a great fit. And I'm learning as we do research for it, just all the wonderful things that are going on in New York that sometimes go under the radar, even though it's like there's so much going on. It's easy to just like take the subway to work and back and miss all of it.
For sure. Yeah. I agree.
That's wonderful. I'm thinking, how soon might we get into some playing? I mean, I feel like we got to know you a little bit of background. I want to talk some more, but I know you came ready to play some stuff. Are you ready now?
I am. Yeah.
All right. Let's do it. Let's put you on the spot. Tell us what you have ready at your fingertips here, and any background or not that you think might be relevant.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought today I would play Chopin's Scherzo number 3 in C sharp minor. This is a piece I've played a lot over the years, but it's recently been on programs, and I was talking with Hannah about what I might present in June, and we went through a bunch of different iterations, but I think it ended up with Chopin because no piano festival is complete without him there. So this is one of my favorite works of his. It's scherzo means joke, but the Chopin scherzi are anything but
no joke.
Yeah, they're quite stormy and passionate, but in the middle you'll hear this beautiful chorale tune, which it's ornamented by, I think people usually call them waterfalls. You'll hear these beautiful kind of cascading, descending arpeggios, and it's always a great passage to test out pianos. I think it's just a great color. There's so many coloristic possibilities, and it's also I like to test if the soft pedal works on the piano I'm playing on. So anyway, so that was the piece I thought I'd offer.
Sounds
today.
great. Yeah, let's check it out. And I'll spotlight you while you're playing, and then we'll bring everybody else back on as well.
Okay.
When you're finished.
See if we can get my hands a little bit more.
Yeah, that looks great. That's perfect.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, that's no joke.
Pretty intense piece. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, check this piece out. It's a joke, and then you play it. It's like, just kidding, not a joke.
I mean, it has the triple meter, you know, 1, 2, 3, kind of scherzo rhythm, you know.
Yeah.
I always think of the Beethoven symphony, you know. That rhythm is very prevalent in this piece.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, man, a lot of work goes into that. Yeah, and you get the music book open up there, but clearly it's all memorized. I don't know what piece is up there.
That was the Mendelssohn that, if you wanted a second piece, I was going to play a Mendelssohn song without words, but
yeah, we might do that if you're up for it later. But you know, thanks for playing that first of all. I think one of my emerging goals has just become, you know, and it's one that I intentionally care about, but one that I feel is sort of connecting itself with me, is just exposing people to more culture, you know. Like, there's so many people like yourself that are, you know, diligently producing incredible music, you know, and you've got your audience of people who know about it, but there's a lot of people who, you know, they're just probably watching Netflix instead of checking out a concert or something, you know. And I think we just owe it to ourselves as a society, especially in New York where all these opportunities are, just go out and have real culture wash over you, you know. Yeah, so that's wonderful. So I appreciate you sharing and all the hard work you put into your craft. Listening to you play and watching you play on that piano makes me want to ask about the piano. So any interesting story, you know, behind it? Where'd the piano come from? Is this like a childhood piano? Did you acquire it at some point? What's the story there?
Yeah, there is a story for sure. So this was my great-grandfather's piano. I mentioned earlier he was a composer. So it is a Steinway M from the 1930s, I think 1932. And it was actually, I'm sort of embarrassed to say this, it was mahogany. And I had it rebuilt by Clavier House about 4 years ago during COVID. Yeah, it was getting very tired and overly bright. It's still a rather bright piano that's pretty lively. But yeah, I decided to put a lot of work into rebuilding it. And I like the approach Clavier House takes. They generally use, I think they try to use Hamburg stuff, Renner action and so forth. So yeah, this is my great-grandfather's piano. It's sort of, you know, it's been rebuilt, so it's quite different than it was. Even like the decal is different. It used to be the older one. But yeah, it's a family heirloom, I guess you could say.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah. That's incredible. You brought up Clavier House, and you know, this program goes out all over the world, you know, like goes to Belgium and Sweden and the Philippines and whatever. So Clavier House is relatively well known in New York City. To its credit, you know, a very wonderful institution. Can you tell us more about how you connected with them, and you know, were you considering multiple options? Was that kind of your go-to from the start? You know, how did you get to collaborating with them on this particular project?
Yeah, great question. There were a few different people I was considering. There was another person, Alex Kostakis from Piano Craft.
We've had him on the program before.
Oh, okay. And
he rebuilt my piano.
Oh, he rebuilt your piano.
He rebuilt my Model C before I bought it. And then Clavier House rebuilt it after that. But,
okay.
No, Alex, the guy who I bought my piano, my Model C from, worked with ANC Craft, so I have like certificates from them. Yeah.
Okay. How did I get to know Clavier originally? I guess actually, when I was doing a competition, this is like 10 plus years ago, I was looking for a small venue to run through my program, and they have a small concert hall there. They used to be on 58th Street. I guess it was called Piano Row, like all the stores in a row. And so I met their two brothers. One of them is now deceased. And every time I went in there was like a new piano that fascinated me. There was the Fazioli. That was the first time I ever played them. And then they had something called, I think it's called a Bogani. I don't even remember how you pronounce it. It's a Hungarian piano. It kind of looks like a spaceship. They had that there. But I really loved the rebuild pianos that I performed with the violinist you mentioned, Artur Kaganovsky. We did all the Brahms sonatas on this rebuilt late 1800s piano. And one of my teachers, he recommended that all the people that he worked with, he recommended that they get their pianos done by Sujatri. He just, I've had so many people recommend him as the best in the business. And this teacher was kind of an influence on me. It's funny you mentioned pedaling, because he was like a specialist in the pedal too. So all this fine stuff I couldn't really do certainly I couldn't do it on my digital piano, and I couldn't do it on my old piano at home. So that was another reason that I went ahead with this, because it was a pretty, it was an investment.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for sharing the story. Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, our core audience is piano technicians, of course, and so we're always fascinated by people's relationships with their pianos and pianists, and their relationship with their technicians and things like that. Anything else? I mean, it's clear the piano's been around for a while. You hadn't had a chance to. You grew up with it in your house too, like with your family. Even though it was your grandfather's, was it like at his house? Was it at your parents' house, like for your whole childhood, or what's been your experience with it throughout your lifetime?
Yes. Well, I was fortunate. I grew up, my earliest years, I was living downstairs in like a split level house, and my grandparents lived upstairs. So the piano was with me. I could play on it, whenever I wanted. And then when we moved to our own house, like my parents moved out, we got the piano. And it's funny, like my mom never wanted to give me the piano. She always said, well, not until you're settled, whatever that means. But during COVID, she agreed.
Married, right? It means married.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Married, but like, whatever. Like
you bought a house or bought
a house, yeah. But somehow during COVID, actually, she agreed for me to get the piano. So I don't even know if it really belongs to. I guess it's mine technically at this point, but because I'm the only one who really plays anymore. But yeah, I was always
try to take it away from me.
Yeah, and it's always been my piano. Like growing up, sure. We had, yeah.
And what's been your evolution of understanding the instrument, right? I'm sure you're a kid, you see the piano tuner come every once in a while, whatever. Maybe you're interested, maybe you're not. Yeah. You ever like open it up? Do you ever get to understand how it functions? Different piano tuners throughout the years. Like, what's been your relationship on that angle of it, if anything?
Yeah, well, I would say that I've always been interested in it, but I never really had the time to learn for real. I mean, I guess I've done a little like spot tunings, just with fixing something that was really bad. Yep. But it's a fascinating topic. When I was at Carnegie Mellon, I took a class called Physics of Musical Sound. And that was pretty eye-opening as to the mathematics of it and the tuning schemes, the evolution of tuning schemes, and how there's really no perfect tuning possible. I mean, I'm totally messing this up, I'm sure, because I'm
good so far.
But you have to like stretch the top a little bit, and like it was fascinating, and also like the idea of just tuning versus like the even equal temperament and mean tone. So I was fascinated by all that. And then later on in my college experience, the tuner, the technician, he started having classes for people. And I went to I only went to one. I should have gone to them looking back, because I have friends who now are like, they're tuning piano, like they became licensed, and they're like their side hustle in addition to being a pianist. And he helped me hear the beats. I never could hear that before, so that was very interesting to understand like what that means. So yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in it, but I don't really have any specialty. Yeah,
gone deeper than a lot of people have. Even as far as you have. I was just, we bring on new technicians on our team in New York and kind of show them the ropes. So I was just talking with team members this past week about some of these fundamentals, and the Pythagorean comma is maybe something you learned about. Hannah, are you familiar with this? Probably not. Pythagorean comma. So basically, in brief, which I don't know if I can describe this in brief, but basically a piano string or any type of string, when you divide it into thirds, then you basically get the fourth or the fifth, depending on whether you go up or down, and so basically, we all know about the circle of fifths. If you keep going up a fifth, up a fifth, up a fifth, then you end up at the original pitch, right?
Yes.
But if you actually do that with an actual string, or even if you just do it mathematically, if you cut something into thirds and then keep cutting that into thirds and into thirds, you don't actually get back to the original pitch. You get a little bit off. And that number is an actual, consistent, mathematical constant, if you want to call it that, something like pi or E or whatever. And it's kind of a mystery when you try to confront it, right? It's like, well, intuitively, as musical people having musical ear, we just imagine that circle of sequence of pitches comes back to the original exactly. But mathematically, the universe says no. And it's kind of one of those things you can just sit back and go, yes. It's just something to sort of let wash over you and be like, well, I don't get it, but okay.
Is that related at all? I'm going to also botch this, but if you add up all of the fifths, you get one number, and if you add up all the octaves, you get like a different number. They don't line up.
Yeah, that's basically a similar concept. Yeah.
Okay.
Similar concept. Yeah, if you go up and up, yeah, exactly. So if I were to go, let's say at a very low, because if you want to just keep cutting the string, you have to go higher and higher and higher in pitches, right? So, but if I do it by octaves, then I'm going to just double the note, right? So start with you had 440, you have 220, you have 110. So let's say you have 55 hertz, right? 55 hertz is a low A. You go up to 110, 220, 440, 880, and so forth. But you get to a certain number, and it's like a nice round number, like 880, right? Or 1760 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that same thing through fifths or fourths, and you go up and up and up and up, that's exactly what you're talking about. You will not get to that even number, right? It'll be slight, it'll be close, but it won't be exactly there.
Yeah.
And if you go by fifth, if I get this right, you will be a little too sharp. And if you go up by fourths, I believe you'll be a little bit too flat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in, I think I heard that some of the historic recordings, people like Alfred Cortot, were done on pianos that were tuned like mean tone or different temperament.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that's a whole world. All right, well, that was a fun rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I love hearing about that kind of thing. I think another performance would be kind of cool. We could do it now, or we could chat a little bit more. What do you think what do you feel more comfortable with? Yes, Hannah, what do you got?
One more story, and then I think Eric.
What do you got?
Oh, are you going to be playing Mendelssohn, Eric?
Yeah, I thought I'd do the Mendelssohn. Yeah.
So before we move on to Mendelssohn, I wanted to mention a story that just came to me because Eric and I chatted about the podcast. And I didn't know that he studied with Byron Janis, who was a renowned, wonderful, wonderful concert artist who died recently. And among other things, was one of Vladimir Horowitz's only real pupils for about 4 years, and who really believed he was the reincarnation of Chopin. He interpreted Chopin so beautifully. And I had the good fortune of meeting him in the 1990s, right after I had my piano rebuilt. And, you know, if I didn't say it earlier very clearly, Eric was one of Byron Janis's students. So that like tied us together in yet another way that made me respect him even more. I was a very close friend to a recording producer named Max Wilcox early on in the 1990s, when he was still very busy, like recording Richard Good and the Emerson String Quartet. And my husband at the time was one of his artists. And Max and I were very, very close. So he knew all about my adventures with the keyboard and when I rebuilt my piano. And he said, you know, Byron Janis, he had this botched thumb operation. He could not play octaves anymore. He was really so upset, and he just expected Steinway to make a piano for him. He just was waiting for that to happen. And when Max found out that I had a piano that you could basically gain another key on, like a Joseph Hoffman piano, Byron wanted to come and play it. So I welcomed him to our house. I was with Paul at that time, and we lived on 86th Street and Park Avenue in this very big apartment. So it was kind of like we had a little concert hall in our house where we could have house concerts. And I didn't want to interfere with Byron's privacy, but you know, I left the door open to the long hallway and the back part of the apartment, and it was one of the most glorious memories I have of hearing Chopin. He was just, I don't know how to put it into words, the phrasing and the touch and the delicacy, the understanding of the language that he had was really different. And I'm so happy that Eric had a chance to study with him. He said he was at his funeral recently. So that was just very special to me and for me to reflect upon. And then I think Eric should tell us about this next piece and his relationship to it, maybe, and you know, why he would like to share it.
Great.
Sure. Yeah, I just quickly studying with Mr. Janis. I played for him on and off for about 4 years. The first time I played for him was 2017. And probably Chopin was the composer I played for him the most. It was, you know, we worked on the second sonata, the famous Funeral March sonata. And I would say he was more of a coach than a teacher. He wasn't like explaining the nitty gritty of how to play the piano, but his main emphasis was on singing. He was always telling me, like, listen to singers, and just kind of, he was very quiet. He would kind of almost whisper to me, like, what to do or what he felt. And it was always like thoughtful about like, where is the phrase going? Where is it coming from? Very kind of deceptively simple advice, you know? And I remember a few times I would go to him, I was kind of playing almost like an imitation of Horowitz. I was so obsessed with Horowitz. And he would like scold me because Horowitz was known for backing away at the top of a phrase. Instead of going like da da dee da dum, he would go da 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 da. He would back away, and Mr. Janis was like, "Why do you do that?" And I'm like, I'm thinking, well, Horowitz did it, but he didn't like that. He was kind of very. I mean, he obviously had this great romanticism to him, but he was also very classic in a way. I don't know how you describe it. You know, he was very much a fidelity to the text musician. Every symbol, every little marking had to be observed. Otherwise, he was not happy with me. So anyway, all right. So I'll be playing this Mendelssohn duetto. I actually am planning, I don't know if I should share this, but I'm planning to play this piece at a memorial for recording engineer Joe Patridge. Do you know Joe Patridge? Yeah, so
we did a little, we had a guest on who and we did a little tribute actually to Joe in a
Okay.
previous episode. Yeah.
Yes.
And Eric, Joe was not exactly a student, but he looked up to Max Wilcox, and I know Joe because we were part of Team Max when Max got Alzheimer's disease, and John Gingrich and Joe Patridge and we were at his farewell party, and we would get together, and we wanted to help Max. So Joe became a close friend of mine, and he was with me at the first Strato Festival. He recorded it. And
wow,
that was the first where there was no audience. It was all virtual, and he recorded for us so that I could have a broadcast. I had like 5 artists in New York then, including myself. And I'm so happy that we had that experience with him. No one knew he would go so soon. You know, it's very true.
It was it was.
And Jed Disler is taking over Joe's concert series at Clavier House. So this is like a very closely family here that we have in this room.
Yeah, I think he's the best one to do that because he's the only one I know who has the encyclopedic knowledge that Joe had of the piano repertoire. But anyway, so this is what I plan to play. It's basically like I think of it as 2 lovers. You know, you'll hear the dialogue of the duet, and later on they're together singing in unison, which is a great moment. I just love this piece. I really want to learn a lot of songs without words, but it's a gorgeous miniature. And anyway, so yeah.
Before you begin, can you check your local recording there? Is that still rolling?
It is, yeah.
Awesome. All right, great. Lovely. Thank you very much. It's a very beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Did you say how you arrived upon that piece? Like what's been your experience with this type of music previously, or how it came to be the next one on your repertoire?
Well, when I thought somebody asked me if I would like to play at this memorial, because I was pretty close with Joe. I lived in his first floor apartment for a year, and I've been friends with him for years, like over a decade. And I was just thinking of like really lyrical pieces that are just very, very singing and gorgeous. And there were a couple contenders. I was actually thinking of playing a choral prelude by Bach that I love, Ich rufe zu dir. It's for the organ. And then there was another Cortot transcription called Litany. It's a Schubert song. But this one came up to me because there's a recording by one of my favorite pianists, Ignaz Friedman. And that recording is just like sublime. I don't know, it's captivating. So I played through all of those pieces I just mentioned, and I've actually been teaching the duetto to one of my adult students. So it was a little bit convenient. I thought, oh, I'll just do that because it's already, I'm already familiar with it. And it's very tricky, actually. Like all these running triplets, and it's hard to memorize. I do plan to memorize it in the next week or so. It's almost there, but yeah. So.
We're going to be wrapping up soon, but I'm really curious as you're talking through this, and maybe Hannah, you could chime in as well. How do you explore and discover within the realm of classical piano? Are you listening to, there's classical radio stations, of course, nowadays there's like Spotify. Do you get recommendations from, teachers or friends, or how do you, and I'm specifically asking, just unabashedly for myself, because I don't get to explore classical piano as much as I really like to. But also for those people that are listening where, same thing, how do I dive a little bit deeper into the classical, what's available in classical piano, or how do you approach it?
Go first, Eric.
Okay.
Afterwards.
A couple of things were going off in my head. I think I've personally discovered a lot of repertoire through attending competitions in my earlier years. I would go to piano competitions, I'd see what people are playing and hear things that were like, oh my God, I want to play that piece. What is that piece? Like I had a lot of moments like that in competitions, and also festivals, summer festivals, and certainly radio when I was growing up. I loved listening to like David Duvall's program every week, and I guess now you have the equivalent of that with like Jed Disler has a program. I think it's called Between the Keys. So yeah, also my teachers, the teachers I had, they always were sharing interesting ideas. But yeah, I would say that those are the main ways that I discovered the piano repertoire. I also was fortunate to have a lot of music from my great-grandfather. And I had a really cool book that I lost now. It was a directory of duo art piano rolls. And it was kind of a cool relic from the past. I don't know what happened to it, but it had all the famous pianists of the day and their recordings listed with these fascinating descriptions. I don't know I think David Duvall used to talk about James Huneker, the notes he would put in the Chopin editions, and how they were almost more captivating than the music. They're so well described, and that's how this book was. So I read about Hungarian Rhapsody No. 9 of Liszt or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I want to hear that piece. So there was. That was another thing growing up. So I know there are there are books like that you could get, about the repertoire. Or read the Great Pianist by Schoenberg. That's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Anna, any other thoughts
Well,
before we wrap?
I'm older than you guys, and I have had this incredible luck to have the parents that I had, who took me to concerts since I was 2 years old, and I traveled all over the world. I heard, I think the St. Matthew Passion was one of the first things I heard when I was a toddler in some church in Germany. And my mother was this Korean woman who was just fanatic about classical music, like a lot of Koreans. So if Mitsuko Uchida was playing all of Mozart, I would have to hear all of it live. If there was a Schubertiade, she would get tickets for us every year. So I went to the Schubertiade at the 92nd Street Y for years. I think I still have all of the festival programs from that. If Brendel or Good or anybody was playing all the Beethoven sonatas, I had to hear all of them. And at first I was like, Mom, I'm practicing 6 hours a day. I'm going to lose my mind. I can't listen to this much classical music. I would argue with her. But to this day, I thank her for that. And I had teachers who said, just get the cheapest ticket for all the solo piano subscriptions at Carnegie Hall, go to the top of the balcony. And I would always sneak down into the parquet when I was a student, and I made friends with the ushers, and I would always get at least half of the concert I would hear from the parquet. And I did it. I did exactly what my teacher told me to. I went to hear all the pianists. I would go backstage and shake their hands, and I would put little check marks next to the pieces I wanted to play. And back when I was a student, there was some amazing place called HMV on the corner of 86th Street and Lexington Avenue. It was this rival Tower Records. First there was Tower Records, where you could go and just go through stuff. But at HMV, you could actually listen to stuff. They had stations, they had 4 or 5 places you could sit down with headphones, and they would let you listen to sample CDs. And I lived on 91st and Lexington, so that was my backyard. If they there was a Barnes and Noble next to it, they would there was a piano. So there were all kinds of resources. There were music stores that had pianos in them that you could play the scores back then. I want to recreate all of that before I die. That's part of the reason I'm here with Ethan, creating my insane dream of having a venue and a piano place and a school. And I have hundreds of books of piano music. I miss them desperately. They're all in storage. I used to have these tall bookcases in my part. So that's all stories, but there are ways to do this that need to be developed beyond YouTube. I mean, I sent my students, links of all the YouTube pianists that I recommend, because they don't know what they're listening to. There's an ocean of YouTube, and I'm sorry to say it, but some of the recordings are not things that you should listen to for references, because they're between you and me, okay?
Yeah.
But I feel as if that question you asked just took me down memory lane in such a beautiful way. So thank you.
Yeah, no, wonderful. No, I'm glad that some of those questions are very, they uncover beautiful.
There are concerts, all over New York City and in cities all over the world.
I have to say,
hear a live concert as much as live music, classical music, as much as you can, and you'll learn repertoire. Yeah,
you're kind of reminding me of these experiences we've been having locally. So we took my 6-year-old to see a children's symphony thing in Chicago here, and we didn't realize this, but on our way to see the symphony for the kids, there was actually a building. We saw a woman with a cello. My son plays cello, and we're like, oh, look, it's a woman with a cello. And we started talking to her, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go get some music from this building over here. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of it, but she's like, yeah, there's a violin, luthier in there that, that everybody goes to, and then I go and get something fixed. And but it happened to be the same building where the Chicago Youth Symphony rehearsed. And so we got to go in there, and it happened to be an open day where you would watch them rehearse. But the thing that I found fascinating is it's this beautiful old building too. And in the elevators, you know, they actually have to have an elevator person still running it, and there's these like cool old elevators. And there's another place where we go. My son is taking capoeira lessons, this Brazilian martial art, and they have which is beautiful if you're not familiar with it. And they have those lessons at a dance center. It's called the Ruth Page Dance Center in Chicago. But it's got the same vibe, you know, it's like filled with dancers, you know, and it's this old building, and the elevators are, you know, this kind of old thing that's still running and rolling up and down. But it's exactly like you said, there is magic there, you know, and you know, some buildings, you know, Steinway Hall, for example, right? It's like the original one over there is kind of like not there anymore, right? And they just kind of built up the high rise and all that stuff. And that stuff goes away. But as much as we can enjoy it while it's here and recreate the magic and mystery of it is well worth exploring for sure.
We're gonna do it, Ethan. You don't even know how much you've already helped. We're gonna do it. We're gonna create a renaissance.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, that's a good note to start to wrap up on. We're just about at the end of the hour here, maybe a touch over, which is just fine. Before we depart here, I guess we'll go over to Hannah first, and then Eric. But anything like you'd like to share, parting words? Hey, go check this out, that out, some website, some social media thing, whatever, some concert, some plug. Hannah, what do you have? And then we'll cut over to Eric.
Of course, I have to talk about the rest of our concerts at the 2024 Stretto Piano Festival. I think I mentioned it last month, but here I go again. May 25th through June 4th, we have 5 days of concerts, including the music of David Amram. Eric will be playing Jed and Steve, as I mentioned earlier. We've got pop and jazz and classical. There's a Sunday with the 2nd of June, we'll have some living women composers. It's like all the women are on Sunday, and then it's going to be all guys on the final night on Tuesday. So we have wonderful concerts at Symphony Space. Please go to strettopianoconcerts.org/2024. And you can see all of the ticket links. You can see all of the performers. We also have a dozen concerts all over the world. David Clavins is going to be participating. So we have a Latvian pianist playing on the first day of the festival. We have people in Dallas, San Diego, Victoria, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, London, Melbourne. I'm overwhelmed with joy at the collaboration we have this year. It's really our biggest year yet, and we're so honored to be able to share it with you, and that you've supported us for the past year, Ethan. You know, May 2023 we started here, and just so delighted to have Eric join us today. So that's my pitch for this.
Wonderful. And we'll keep spreading the word. We'll highlight it. We got to remember to highlight it in our newsletter. Remind me. We'll put it in our new cultural newsletter as well for Floating Piano. Eric, anything you want to share? Links or tips or words of advice?
I guess so. This whole year I've been wrapped up in applying for my doctorate, and I'm pleased to say I'll be going to Manhattan School of Music starting in the fall. But wonderful. Because I was so concentrated on that, I don't have too many concerts at the moment. I do have the Beethoven Second Concerto coming up on June 3rd, and that's at the Broadway Presbyterian Church. It's near Columbia University. I also wanted to share that you mentioned earlier period instruments. I did kind of specialize, well, not specialize, but I had a foray into that world for a while. And if you go, I was the only American, and I was a semifinalist in the first international Chopin competition on period instruments in Poland. Wow. So if you search for my name on YouTube and Chopin, those performances come up. They're on Erard and Pleyel pianos, which might be of interest to people.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that sounds great. We'll go check it out. Appreciate that.
Great to hear
Perfect.
that.
Perfect for our audience. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. I'll do our outro. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Eric Clark and Hannah Reimann for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting-edge instruction for piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient. You could subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in a member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. You could sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. And then briefly, those plugs that we're doing lately: podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog, pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com, our socials at Pianotech Masterclass on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and check out our masterclasses every third Thursday of the month. And our most recent one with Dean Rayburn on action geometry. You can still check that out at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com/Dean-Rayburn-2024. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you later.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Eric.
It was a pleasure on the show. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.